I know a lot of people go on and on about making a good first impression, but what about all those games that get good after the prologue? A bad beginning doesn't matter as much if things get better afterwards. But bad endings, they will forever leave a sour taste in players' mouths purely because there's nothing else to come after and wash that taste away. The human mind is an odd thing, with a predilection to completely disregard whatever came before to hyper-focus on the very last thing it experienced. Because of this, a game could be perfect right up until the end, and many of us would decry the whole thing as terrible simply because it ended badly. So, just to be clear, the following games may be fantastic 95% of the way through, and most of them are. They're just let down by spectacularly dropping the ball in the final act. That being said, these endings really are terrible. Seriously, it's like the developers wanted to infuriate us. Why else would they be so bad? I'm underwhelming final boss Ashton from Triple Jump, and here are 10 video game endings that were profoundly insulting. Number 10, Mass Effect 3. You all knew this one was going to be on here, so we might as well get it out of the way. How do you end the greatest, most ambitious space opera RPG trilogy to ever grace the world of gaming? Do you take into account every decision, both major and minor, that players have made over the course of all 3 games to craft a bespoke ending that reflects their unique experience? Or do you forget all of that and ask players to pick their favourite colour? After 2 games of build-up, the cosmic horrors that are the Reapers are finally here, come to harvest all sentient life and destroy all you hold dear. The sheer desperation and scale of the galactic war is displayed expertly through the 3rd game. So is it any wonder then that fans were expecting BioWare to keep up the momentum and stick the landing? Clearly, this was too much for them, as in place of a final climactic battle, players are forced to sit through a tedious, monotone monologue from the Star Child, and are then asked to pick from either Destroy, Control, or Synthesis. While this choice should result in drastically different consequences for the fate of the galaxy, essentially all that changes is the colour of the ending cutscene. How overwhelmingly underwhelming. Number 9, Ghosts and Goblins. Whoever sold the hapless hero of this tough-as-nails platformer his armour was either a terrible smithy or was actively trying to get Sir Arthur killed. This is because said armour crumbles to pieces if any enemy lands but a single hit, leaving poor Arthur running around in his underwear. Any subsequent hit and it's curtains for the naked knight. As previously mentioned, this game isn't easy. With the player only able to take 2 hits, they have to play practically perfectly, dodging every pitfall and lancing every ghoul with expert timing. You'd think then the game would aptly reward anyone brave or bullheaded enough to reach the end. But no. Manage to defeat the purple bully Astaroth, and players will be greeted with the message, "This room is an illusion," and will be sent back to the very beginning of the game to do it all again. Understandably, most will simply throw down their controller at this point and never touch Ghosts and Goblins again. But some may persevere in the vain hope of being truly rewarded by beating the game twice. Got some bad news for you there, friend, as while you will truly rescue the princess on your 2nd attempt, your reward is nothing but the message, "Congratulations, this story is happy end." So worth it. Number 8, Fable 2. Fable creator Peter Molyneux has built his entire career on false promises and failed payoffs, so you'd think he'd be to blame for Fable 2's frankly insulting ending. However, while he created the world, he neither designed the gameplay nor wrote the story, so I suppose he's off the hook, just this time. Fable 2 is all about player choice and expression. Do you wish to be the daring hero doing good wherever it's needed? Or perhaps a villain so evil they actually grow devil horns? The choice is yours, and the game adapts, to the best of its late 2000s ability, accordingly. As such, you'd expect its ending would empower its players by, once again, putting them at the centre of something grand. So, after tracking down Lucian, the vile fiend who killed your spouse, your sister, and your dog, do you take him out in a satisfying fight to the death, or capture him and ensure he pays for his crimes? No, you shoot him once, mid-speech, and he falls to his unceremonious death. That is, if you were quick enough. Act too slowly and companion Reva will shoot him for you, robbing you of any catharsis at all, meagre as it may be. At least you get to wish your dog back afterwards. Number 7, Far Cry 5. It's not unheard of to play through a lengthy story thinking you're in the right, only to find out the villain was actually onto something in the end. It's less likely when the villain is the leader of a quasi-religious murderous cult, and even more unlikely that the something they were onto was total nuclear annihilation. But in Far Cry 5, that's the way the proverbial cookie crumbles. Players start the game on their way to arrest man-bun-loving, Jared Leto wannabe Joseph Seed on several accounts of kidnapping and assault linked to his countrywide, somewhat antagonistic cult. From the beginning, he spouts nonsense about the end times, and while they explore, players can find several prepper bunkers stocked for said end times, but you're led to believe this is all part of Joseph's manipulations to control his subjects. And so you play through the rest of the story without a worry. Insanely, Joseph Seed's apocalyptic predictions come true though, as when players finally handcuff him for his crimes, the world immediately erupts in atomic hellfire. What's insulting here is the sudden and unpredictable nature of this abrupt apocalypse. Nothing else Joseph predicted was true, so why this? For such a climactic visual, it feels remarkably anticlimactic. Number 6, 12 Minutes. 12 Minutes is a strange game to say the least. It's a mystery built around the idea that the world resets every 12 minutes, while your protagonist's memories persist. Your standard time loop puzzle. What isn't standard is everything else. Letting time play out normally sees the protagonist come home to his happy wife, who just found out she's pregnant, only for the door to bust open and an angry Willem Dafoe-voiced cop to promptly arrest them both, then, in a struggle, strangle the protagonist to death. Time resets, and it's up to the player to figure out what the hell just happened and how to break the loop. It's an intriguing setup, and the strict 12-minute time limit forces players to think on their feet if they want to get to the bottom of it. Unfortunately, once players do find the answers, they'll wish they hadn't. This is because it turns out that the protagonist and his wife are half-siblings. What? It gets weirder. Once the truth has been revealed, the time loop itself is revealed to be a fantasy, conjured up by the protagonist as he contemplates whether he really should follow through on his love for his sister, or whether he should just forget about her completely. Much like how you should forget about this game. Number 5, Borderlands. The original Borderlands' whole shtick was getting its players to cry, "What's in the vault?" Right from the moment they pick their character and step off the bus, they are told it's their destiny to find the vault and bask in the treasures that await them within. Shame it's empty, well, practically empty. After fighting their way across Pandora, battling an onslaught of bandits, beasties, and private militia, and finding all of the pieces of the mysterious vault key, it gets stolen by Commandant Steele. Steele uses the key to open the vault just before the player can stop her, only for some ungodly nightmare of tentacles and teeth to emerge and immediately skewer her. This is the Destroyer, and it's the final boss. And it's a god-awful fight. Being so ludicrously large and half-trapped within the vault as it is, the Destroyer can only flail its tentacles pathetically, meaning that all players have to do is shoot it from behind a rock for a few minutes until it unceremoniously dies. And that's it. Game over. No loot, no satisfaction, go home. As awful as the ending was, it doesn't hold a candle to that of the entire Borderlands movie. The less said about that, the better. Number 4, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Unless your name is Peter Jackson, adapting the work of the late great father of high fantasy, J.R.R. Tolkien, is probably not going to end well. We're looking at you, the Lord of the Rings Gollum and the Rings of Power. It was a miracle then that Shadow of Mordor was as good as it was. The game's positive reception was partly due to its satisfying combat and mostly lore-accurate world, but mainly due to its revolutionary Nemesis system. which saw the hierarchy of orcs change on the fly depending on which were killed by and which killed the player. The game's story was largely forgettable, but the dynamic stories created by the Nemesis system were just so fun to mess around with that it didn't really matter. You'd think then that the developers would have tied their ending into it somehow. But no, after a substandard boss battle against whichever orc the game decreed was your number one nemesis, you are thrown into an incredibly rushed ending in which the Black Hand resurrects the big bad himself, Sauron. Cue epic fight? No, cue insultingly easy QTE boss fight in which the Dark Lord is vanquished in less than a minute with 2 or 3 button prompts. Makes you wonder why Frodo and the gang had so much trouble. Number 3, Asura's Wrath. Oh, what's that? You've just fought your way through multiple gods in a multitude of different game genres and were expecting to see the ending of Asura's Violence tale as a reward? Well, too bad! If you want to see the real ending, you're going to have to fork over a little more cash and purchase the Epilogue DLC. The true ending, in which Asura finally gets his vengeance on the architect of all his problems, Chakravartin the Creator, is actually quite a satisfactory and cathartic end. The insulting part is the fact that it wasn't included as part of the base game, which infuriatingly ends on a decidedly anticlimactic cliffhanger. Gamers who played Asura's Wrath when it first released were left with this sour taste for 3 months before Capcom offered the true ending, behind a paywall, naturally. Unfortunately, that was mid-2010s Capcom's MO. Carve up a perfectly good single-player game, push it out the door unfinished, and then sell the cut pieces back as DLC. Even if those cut pieces were as important as a missing character, or, I don't know, an ending. While the other endings already mentioned were so bad you maybe wish they didn't exist, at least they were actually there, included on the disc, something which can't be said for Asura's Wrath. Number 2, Fallout 3. From an ending sold as DLC to an ending so bad it had to be rectified by DLC. Fallout 3's ending is infamously stupid for both its lack of logic and the fact that it flies in the face of the power fantasy the rest of the game carefully crafts. Whether you're a goody two-shoes or a heartless vagabond who'd nuke a town just for laughs, if you follow Fallout 3's story through to the end, you'll find yourself standing by an irradiated chamber containing a broken water purifier. Here, there is a choice. Enter the chamber yourself, fix the purifier and die in the process, make Brotherhood member Sarah Lyons do it, or let the thing explode. As most people are inherently good and thus lean towards good endings, most players will undoubtedly end up sacrificing themselves. Problem is, a number of potential companions are immune to radiation poisoning, most notably Fawkes the super mutant. So why couldn't they hop in and fix the purifier and save you a pointless death? And I'm not buying Fawkes' hand-wavy answer of, "It's your destiny." Naturally, fans were insulted, and so Bethesda had no other option than release a DLC that both allowed Fawkes to help out and saw players actually survive their sacrifice if they chose that route. Could have made it free though. And number 1, Starfield. Oh, Bethesda, you really don't learn, do you? Both from your own mistakes and the mistakes of your contemporaries, it seems. Not even 25 years of industry experience and 8 years of actual development could save Starfield's end from being both boring and insulting. While it has many problems and isn't the leap forward in gaming many were hoping for, Starfield certainly has its moments. And if you switch your brain off, it's great fun to get lost in for a few hours. The story, once it gets going, is also intriguing enough to string you along. Until the ending, that is. After collecting all artifacts and building the armillary, players enter the Unity and meet an alternate version of themselves, who tells them to enter the void and be reborn as a Starborn. What this really means is that you're stripped of all of your gear and sent back to the beginning of the game. From here, you play through the story again in a new way, only without the driving mystery to do so, and with the odd option to skip most of the quests and rush back to the ending to, reset everything again. What is the point? No Man's Sky already did this when players reached the centre of the universe, and fans weren't happy then, so why did you think they'd be pleased this time, Bethesda?